The asterisk Odyssey Dawn asterisk drifted silently through the vast emptiness of space, its sleek metallic hull glinting faintly under the light of a distant star. The ship was massive, built to withstand the harshest conditions of deep space exploration. Inside, Captain Lucas Grayson stood on the bridge, his sharp blue eyes scanning the view screen as Zeta-7 loomed larger with each passing moment. The planet below was a swirling mix of greens and browns, shrouded by thick clouds that hinted at a wild and untamed world. Lucas turned to his crew, who were busy preparing for the landing. "All right, team," he said in a calm but firm voice. "This is it. We've traveled months to get here, and we're about to step foot on one of the most mysterious planets in this sector." His tone carried both excitement and caution. Everyone knew the risks. Zeta-7 wasn't just any planet. It had a reputation. Stories from nearby alien traders spoke of monstrous creatures lurking in its jungles, beasts so powerful they could tear apart entire settlements. Some called it the home of the galaxy's most dangerous predator. Dr. Rachel Carter adjusted her glasses as she listened to the captain's briefing. She was an exobiologist, someone who studied alien life, and the thought of discovering new species thrilled her. Her dark hair was pulled back into a tight ponytail, and her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from anticipation. This was her dream. For years, she had waited for a chance like this, and now it was finally happening. Beside her, Lieutenant Daniel Brooks checked his weapon one last time. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with short-cropped blonde hair and a no-nonsense attitude. While Rachel was excited, Daniel remained focused. It was his job to keep the crew safe, and he took that responsibility seriously. He glanced at Rachel and gave her a small smile. "Ready for whatever's down there?" he asked. "As ready as I'll ever be," she replied, though her voice betrayed a hint of nervousness. The landing party consisted of 6 members, including Lucas, Rachel, and Daniel. They boarded a smaller shuttle and descended toward the surface of Zeta-7. As they broke through the atmosphere, the view outside became clearer. Below them stretched endless forests, their trees towering high into the sky. Strange, glowing plants dotted the landscape, casting eerie shadows across the ground. Rivers snaked through the terrain, shimmering like liquid silver under the dim sunlight. When the shuttle touched down, the airlock hissed open, and the team stepped out onto the alien soil. The air was thick and humid, filled with unfamiliar scents. Strange bird-like creatures flitted between the trees, their calls echoing through the jungle. Rachel immediately began scanning the area, her handheld scanner beeping softly as it collected data. She knelt down to examine a patch of moss-like vegetation, marveling at its unique properties. Daniel, meanwhile, kept a watchful eye on their surroundings. His hand rested on the grip of his plasma rifle, ready to act if anything dangerous approached. He noticed claw marks gouged deeply into the bark of a nearby tree. They were enormous, far bigger than anything he'd seen before. "Looks like something big lives here," he muttered, pointing them out to Lucas. Lucas nodded grimly. "Stay sharp, everyone. We don't know what we're dealing with yet." Just then, a low growl rumbled through the forest. The sound sent chills down their spines. Slowly, a massive shape moved in the shadows. Its glowing eyes locked onto them. And for a moment, time seemed to freeze. Then, with a deafening roar, the creature emerged, a towering beast covered in armored scales, its jaws lined with razor-sharp teeth. It charged straight at them, moving faster than anything its size had a right to. "Take cover," Daniel shouted, raising his weapon. He fired a warning shot, the blast striking the ground near the creature's feet. Startled, the beast hesitated, then retreated into the dense foliage, disappearing as quickly as it had come. The team stood in stunned silence, hearts pounding. Rachel was the first to speak. Did that really just happen?" Lucas let out a slow breath. "Yes, it did. And it means we need to be even more careful. Whatever that thing is, it's not something we can afford to underestimate." As they regrouped and prepared to continue their exploration, none of them realized that this encounter was only the beginning. Zeta-7 held secrets far greater and far deadlier than they could have imagined. Back aboard the Odyssey Dawn the crew gathered in the main briefing room, their faces a mix of excitement and unease. The encounter with the massive creature had left a deep impression on everyone. Captain Lucas Grayson stood at the front of the room, his arms crossed as he studied the footage recorded during their mission. On the large screen behind him, the towering beast could be seen charging out of the shadows, its glowing eyes piercing through the dim jungle light. That thing was huge, Lieutenant Daniel Brooks said, breaking the silence. He leaned forward in his seat, his brow furrowed. I've never seen anything like it. Not even close. Dr. Rachel Carter nodded, her eyes glued to the screen. She had already begun analyzing the data collected during their brief encounter. It's unlike any predator we've encountered before, she said thoughtfully. Its size, speed, and strength. It's almost beyond comprehension. She paused, tapping a few commands into her tablet. A close-up image of the creature's claw marks appeared on the screen. Look at these. They're deeper than they should be for an animal that size. It must have incredible power. The room fell quiet as the crew absorbed the implications. The creature wasn't just dangerous. It was a marvel of evolution, perfectly adapted to dominate its environment. But there was something else bothering Rachel. She hesitated for a moment before speaking again. There's more, she said softly. Some of the locals we spoke to before landing mentioned legends about creatures like this. They call them Xerix. Xerix? Lucas asked, raising an eyebrow. Rachel nodded. Yes, according to the stories, Xerix are apex predators, untouchable rulers of their ecosystems. They hunt in packs, take down prey much larger than themselves, and have no natural enemies. She paused, glancing around the room. But there's one detail that stood out to me. These legends also say that Xerix are intelligent, not just instinct-driven hunters, but cunning, strategic, almost like they learn from their experiences. Daniel frowned. You think that thing we saw might be smarter than it looked? It's possible, Rachel admitted. If the legends are accurate, then we're dealing with something far more complex than a simple beast. Lucas rubbed his chin, deep in thought. Assuming these stories are true, and I'm not saying they aren't, they still don't tell us everything. For example, why did it retreat when you fired your weapon? If it's so powerful, why didn't it attack us directly? That's what worries me, Daniel replied. Maybe it was testing us, sizing us up, or maybe it was waiting for reinforcements. Rachel shook her head. We can't jump to conclusions. We need more information. That's why we're here, to study and understand. The captain nodded. Agreed. But we also need to stay safe. Whatever those things are, they're clearly capable of killing us if they choose to. From now on, every team going down to the surface will follow strict protocols. No wandering off alone. No unnecessary risks. As the meeting wrapped up, Rachel returned to her lab to review the data further. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something important. The Xerix behavior during their encounter had been strange, almost deliberate. It hadn't attacked immediately, despite having the advantage. Instead, it had seemed cautious, almost curious. Could it really be intelligent enough to assess threats? Later that evening, Rachel sat alone in the lab, staring at the images on her screen. Her mind raced with possibilities. If the Xerix were as intelligent as the legends suggested, then humanity's arrival might have already drawn their attention. What would happen if they perceived the crew as a threat? Or worse, as prey? Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. It was Daniel, holding 2 cups of coffee. Thought you could use a break, he said with a small smile. Rachel accepted the cup gratefully. Thanks. I needed this. You've been working nonstop since we got back, Daniel said, leaning against the counter. You okay? I'm fine, she replied, though her tone betrayed her uncertainty. It's just, This feels bigger than us, you know. Like we're stepping into something we don't fully understand. Daniel nodded. Yeah, I get that. But we've faced tough situations before. We'll figure it out. Rachel smiled faintly. I hope you're right. As they talked, neither of them noticed the faint hum coming from Rachel's equipment. On one of the monitors, a series of unusual readings flickered briefly before disappearing. Somewhere below, in the depths of Zeta-7's jungle, something was watching and waiting. The next morning, the crew prepared for their second expedition to Zeta-7's surface. This time, they were better equipped and more cautious. Captain Lucas Grayson had insisted on bringing additional weapons and protective gear, along with traps designed to capture a live Taurak specimen. We need answers, he said firmly during the pre-mission briefing. But we're not going down there unprepared. Dr. Rachel Carter was especially eager to return. She had spent hours reviewing the data from their first encounter, but it wasn't enough. Observing the Xerox in their natural habitat was the only way to truly understand them. Still, she couldn't ignore the unease gnawing at her. The legends about the creature's intelligence lingered in her mind, making her question whether humanity was ready for what lay ahead. Lieutenant Daniel Brooks led the tactical preparations. He oversaw the setup of reinforced steel cages and high-tech sensors designed to detect movement in the dense jungle. If one of those things comes near us, we'll know about it, he assured the team. But even as he spoke, his voice carried a hint of doubt. No matter how advanced their equipment was, facing a creature like the Xerox felt like stepping into uncharted territory. When the shuttle touched down on the planet's surface, the air was thick with humidity, and the jungle seemed alive with sound. Strange birds chirped overhead, while insects buzzed incessantly around the team. Rachel adjusted her scanner and began leading the group deeper into the forest. Her eyes darted between the trees, searching for signs of the Xerox. After several hours of searching, they found what they were looking for: a clearing littered with bones. Massive ribs jutted out of the ground, remnants of some colossal animal. Nearby, claw marks scarred the earth, fresh and deep. This is a hunting ground, Rachel whispered, her voice tinged with awe. They must come here often. Daniel signaled for the team to set up the traps. Using bait laced with synthetic pheromones, they hoped to lure a Xerox into one of the cages. The pheromones mimicked the scent of prey, a trick that had worked on other predatory species in the past. As the team finished setting up, they retreated to a safe distance, waiting silently. Hours passed with no sign of activity. Just as some members of the team began to grow restless, a low rumble echoed through the jungle. The ground vibrated faintly beneath their feet. Rachel gripped her scanner tightly, her heart racing. Then, without warning, the creature appeared. It moved with terrifying speed, its massive form crashing through the underbrush. Its glowing eyes locked onto the bait, and it lunged forward, jaws snapping hungrily. For a moment, everything seemed to go according to plan. The Xerox stepped into the trap, triggering the mechanism that sealed the cage behind it. Cheers erupted from the team. But their celebration was short-lived. With a deafening roar, the Xerox slammed against the bars of the cage. To everyone's horror, the supposedly indestructible steel bent and twisted under its strength. Within seconds, the creature broke free, sending shards of metal flying in all directions. It turned its gaze toward the humans, its eyes burning with fury. "Fall back," Daniel shouted, raising his weapon. The team scrambled to retreat, firing plasma shots to distract the enraged beast. The Xerox hesitated, seemingly disoriented by the sudden barrage of energy blasts, before retreating into the jungle once more. Back aboard the shuttle, the shaken crew regrouped. "That thing tore through our best equipment like it was paper," Daniel muttered, shaking his head in disbelief. "What are we supposed to do now?" Rachel stared out the window, her mind racing. "We underestimated it," she admitted quietly. "But we can't give up. If we're going to survive this, we need to think smarter, not harder." As the shuttle lifted off, Returning to the safety of the Odyssey Dawn the crew knew one thing for certain. Capturing Xerok wouldn't be easy. Somewhere below, hidden in the shadows of the jungle, the creature watched and waited, its intelligence far greater than anyone had imagined. Back aboard the Odyssey Dawn the mood was tense. The crew gathered in the main lab, their faces reflecting a mix of frustration and determination. Captain Lucas Grayson stood at the center of the room, his arms crossed as he listened to Lieutenant Daniel Brooks explain what had gone wrong during their attempt to capture the Xerok. "It broke through our strongest cage like it was nothing," Daniel said, shaking his head. "We're dealing with something far stronger than we anticipated." Dr. Rachel Carter sat quietly, her eyes fixed on the data from the failed trap. She had already run simulations based on the Xerok's behavior, but nothing fully explained how it had escaped so easily. "There's more to this creature than brute strength," she said finally, breaking the silence. Its movements were precise, almost calculated. It didn't just break free randomly. It targeted the weakest points of the cage. Lucas nodded thoughtfully. "So what's the plan? We can't keep throwing resources at this thing only to have it tear them apart." Rachel hesitated for a moment before speaking. "We need a different approach, something that doesn't rely solely on physical barriers." She glanced at Daniel. "What if we used plasma nets instead? They're lightweight, flexible, and capable of delivering a strong electric charge. If we can immobilize the Xerok without harming it, we might stand a chance." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Plasma nets, those are usually reserved for riots or crowd control. You really think they'll work on something that size?" "It's worth a shot," Rachel replied. "The charge won't kill it, but it could slow it down long enough for us to secure it." Lucas considered the idea for a moment. "All right," he said finally. "Let's try it. But we're doing this carefully. No unnecessary risks." The team spent the next several hours preparing the new equipment. Plasma nets were loaded into portable launchers, and each member of the landing party received additional training on how to use them effectively. By the time they returned to Zeta 7's surface, the jungle felt even more foreboding than before. The air was heavy with tension, and every rustle of leaves made the crew jump. They set up their traps again, this time using smaller bait stations designed to lure the Xerok closer without alerting it too soon. Rachel monitored the sensors closely, her fingers hovering over the controls. "Something's coming," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the equipment. The ground trembled slightly as the massive creature emerged from the shadows. Its glowing eyes locked onto the bait, and it moved forward cautiously, sniffing the air. The team held their breath, waiting for the perfect moment to act. When the Xerok stepped into range, Daniel gave the signal. "Now," he shouted. Plasma nets shot out from multiple directions, wrapping around the creature in a web of crackling energy. The Xerok let out a deafening roar, thrashing against the nets, but the charge held firm. For the first time, the galaxy's most feared predator was subdued. Rachel watched in awe as the creature struggled, its movements growing slower and weaker under the constant electric current. "It's working," she breathed, relief washing over her. "We've got it." Daniel approached cautiously, keeping his weapon trained on the Xerok. "Stay back," he warned the others. "Just because it's down doesn't mean it's harmless." As the team worked together to secure the immobilized beast, a sense of triumph spread among them. They had done the impossible. They had captured a live Xerok. But even as they celebrated their success, Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that they were playing with forces they barely understood. The Xerok's intelligence, its power, and its sheer will to survive hinted at mysteries far deeper than anyone had imagined. Back on the shuttle, as they prepared to return to the Odyssey Dawn Rachel stared at the restrained creature, her mind racing. Capturing a Xerok was one thing, but understanding it was another challenge entirely. Somewhere deep within the jungle, other Xeroks watched silently, their glowing eyes hidden in the darkness. The captured Xerac lay motionless in its reinforced containment unit aboard the Odyssey Dawn *, its massive body restrained by energy fields and plasma restraints. The crew gathered around the observation window, their faces a mix of awe and unease. Dr. Rachel Carter was the first to step forward, her eyes scanning the creature's armored hide for any signs of weakness. She had spent hours analyzing footage of the capture, but now, seeing it up close, she noticed something unexpected. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a series of faint cracks running along the Xerac's exoskeleton. "These fractures, they're not from our equipment. They were already there." Lieutenant Daniel Brooks leaned closer to the glass, his brow furrowing. "You think it's injured, or maybe old." Rachel shook her head. "It's not age. These fractures are caused by prolonged exposure to radiation. Zeta-7's environment must be weakening the creatures over time." She tapped a few commands into her tablet, pulling up readings from the planet's atmosphere. "The levels of radiation here are higher than we initially thought. It's subtle enough that most species could adapt, but for something as large and biologically complex as the Xeracs, it's taking a toll." Captain Lucas Grayson crossed his arms, his expression thoughtful. "So what you're saying is that these things aren't invincible after all?" "Exactly," Rachel replied. "Their strength and speed make them apex predators, but they're vulnerable in ways we didn't realize. That's why our technology was able to subdue one." The revelation sparked a heated debate among the crew. Some saw it as proof of humanity's superiority, evidence that even the galaxy's deadliest creatures could be brought down with the right tools. Others, like Daniel, remained cautious. "Just because we can beat them doesn't mean we should," he argued. "We don't know enough about them yet. What if capturing one disrupts the ecosystem? What if others come looking for it?" Rachel nodded, agreeing with Daniel's concerns. "He's right. The Xeracs are part of this planet's balance. If we interfere too much, we could cause damage we can't undo." But not everyone shared their hesitation. Word of the successful capture had spread quickly, and soon the crew received a message from an unexpected source. A private contractor named Marcus Kane had arrived in orbit, requesting permission to dock with the Odyssey Dawn *. Known for his ruthless business practices, Marcus specialized in harvesting rare alien species and selling them to the highest bidder. His ships were equipped with advanced collection gear, and his reputation preceded him. When Marcus boarded the ship, he wasted no time making his intentions clear. "I hear you've got yourselves a live Xerac," he said with a sly grin, his sharp eyes scanning the crew. "That's quite the trophy. I'd be willing to pay handsomely for access to your research, and for more specimens." Lucas frowned, his tone firm. "This isn't about profit. We're here to study and understand, not exploit." Marcus shrugged, unfazed. "Come on, Captain. You've seen what these things are capable of. Imagine the military applications alone. With enough funding, we could turn them into weapons, or better yet, figure out how to control them." The offer divided the crew. Some were tempted by the promise of wealth and resources, while others sided with Lucas and Rachel, insisting that humanity had a responsibility to respect the natural order. Tensions ran high as arguments broke out in the corridors, each side convinced they were right. In the end, Lucas made the final call. "We're not handing over the Xerac or sharing our data," he declared. "If Marcus wants to stay and observe, fine. But under our rules. No poaching, no interference." Marcus smirked, clearly unimpressed. "Suit yourself, but don't say I didn't warn you when someone else beats you to the punch." As Marcus returned to his ship, Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that trouble was brewing. The Xeracs were dangerous, yes, but so were humans. And now, with two very different agendas colliding, the fragile piece of Zeta-7 hung in the balance. Somewhere below, hidden in the shadows of the jungle, the remaining Xeracs stirred, their glowing eyes watching and waiting. Marcus Kane's presence loomed over the Odyssey Dawn * like a storm cloud. Despite Captain Lucas Grayson's firm stance, Marcus wasn't one to back down easily. He had spent years navigating the gray areas of interstellar law, profiting from the exploitation of alien species. To him, the Xerix weren't creatures to be studied. They were commodities, valuable assets to be bought, sold, and weaponized. And he wasn't about to let the crew's moral objections stand in his way. While the crew debated their next steps, Marcus quietly began recruiting allies among them. Not everyone shared Lucas's ideals, especially those who had grown weary of the mission's dangers and hardships. A few crew members, lured by promises of wealth and adventure, agreed to help Marcus in secret. They provided him with maps of the jungle, details about the Xerix hunting grounds, and even access codes to some of the ship's less secure systems. Dr. Rachel Carter noticed the shift almost immediately. Supplies went missing from the lab, and her equipment showed signs of tampering. When she confronted Lieutenant Daniel Brooks about it, he dismissed her concerns as paranoia. "We've got bigger problems to worry about," he said, glancing at the containment unit where the captured Xerix lay. "Like keeping that thing under control." But Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She spent her nights reviewing security footage, searching for anything unusual. It didn't take long to find evidence of Marcus's influence. Crew members sneaking off-duty to meet with his mercenaries, crates of unmarked gear being loaded onto shuttles bound for Zeta-7's surface. Her heart sank as she realized the truth. Marcus wasn't just observing. He was planning something big. The breaking point came when Rachel discovered a hidden message on her tablet, a warning from an anonymous source within Marcus's team. "Stay out of the jungle tomorrow," it read. The note was unsigned, but its meaning was clear. Whatever Marcus had planned, it was happening soon. Rachel rushed to Lucas's quarters, waking him in the middle of the night. "We have to stop him," she urged, showing him the evidence she had gathered. "If we don't act now, he'll destroy everything we've worked for." Lucas listened intently, his expression darkening with each word. When Rachel finished, he nodded grimly. "All right, we'll confront him. But we need proof, not just speculation. If we accuse him without solid evidence, he'll worm his way out of it." The next morning, the crew prepared for another expedition to the surface. Unbeknownst to most of them, Marcus's mercenaries were already in position, setting up traps deeper in the jungle. Their goal was simple: capture as many Xerix as possible, using bait laced with synthetic pheromones to draw the creatures into massive nets. Once trapped, the beasts would be sedated and transported to Marcus's ship for sale to the highest bidder. As the day wore on, tensions aboard the Odyssey Dawn reached a boiling point. Rachel and Daniel led a small team to investigate Marcus's activities, following the trail of clues she had uncovered. What they found shocked them: rows of reinforced cages, piles of bait, and armed mercenaries patrolling the area. It was a full-scale operation, designed to harvest the Xerix with brutal efficiency. Before they could retreat and report back, chaos erupted. One of the mercenaries accidentally triggered a stampede of Xerix, sending the enraged creatures charging through the jungle. Trees splintered, and the ground shook as the beasts tore through everything in their path. The mercenaries scrambled to escape, abandoning their equipment and leaving behind a trail of destruction. Rachel and Daniel barely managed to survive the onslaught, narrowly avoiding the rampaging Xerix thanks to quick thinking and sheer luck. As they returned to the shuttle, battered but alive, Rachel looked back at the devastation. Marcus's greed had unleashed a nightmare, one that could endanger not only the crew but the entire ecosystem of Zeta-7. Back aboard the Odyssey Dawn Lucas confronted Marcus, demanding an explanation. But Marcus refused to take responsibility, blaming the incident on unforeseen circumstances. His smug demeanor only fueled the crew's anger, deepening the divide between those who valued profit over ethics and those determined to protect the planet's fragile balance. As the dust settled, Rachel realized the true cost of humanity's ambition. The Xerix were dangerous, yes, but so were the people who sought to control them. Somewhere in the jungle, The remaining creatures roared in defiance, their glowing eyes watching and waiting. The aftermath of the Xarok stampede left the crew shaken and divided. The jungle below was a scene of chaos, with broken trees and scattered equipment marking the path of destruction. Marcus Kane's operation had unraveled in the worst possible way, and his mercenaries were either fleeing for their lives or lying injured in the wreckage. Back aboard the Odyssey Dawn tempers flared as accusations flew between those loyal to Captain Lucas Grayson and those who had secretly aided Marcus. Rachel Carter sat in the lab, her hands trembling as she reviewed the data from the incident. The stampede had been catastrophic, not just for the crew but for the planet itself. Entire sections of the jungle had been flattened, and countless smaller creatures had likely been killed in the rampage. This wasn't supposed to happen, she whispered to herself, guilt weighing heavily on her shoulders. She had known Marcus was dangerous, but she hadn't imagined the scale of the disaster he would unleash. Lieutenant Daniel Brooks entered the lab, his face grim. "We've got a problem," he said, pulling up a chair beside her. "Marcus isn't backing down. He's blaming us for ruining his operation and says he'll continue whether we like it or not." Rachel looked up, her eyes wide with disbelief. After everything that happened, how can he even think about going back out there? "He's desperate," Daniel replied. "And he knows we don't have the authority to stop him unless we report him to the fleet. But if we do that, it could take weeks for reinforcements to arrive. And by then, it might be too late." Lucas called an emergency meeting to address the situation. The tension in the room was palpable as the crew gathered around the table. Marcus himself was present, his arms crossed, and his expression defiant. "You're making a mistake," he said coldly, addressing Lucas. "The Xaroks are a resource, plain and simple. If you won't help me harvest them, I'll do it myself." "You've already caused enough damage," Lucas shot back, his voice firm. "If you set foot on Zeta 7 again, you'll be putting everyone at risk, including your own people." Marcus smirked. "Don't worry about my crew. They know the risks. As for you," he leaned forward, his tone menacing, "try to stop me, and you'll regret it." The confrontation ended with no resolution. Marcus stormed out of the room, leaving behind a trail of unease. Rachel turned to Lucas, her voice urgent. "We can't let him go back down there. He'll destroy everything." "I know," Lucas replied, "but we need a plan, one that doesn't escalate into violence." That night, Rachel and Daniel worked together to devise a strategy. They knew they couldn't rely on brute force to stop Marcus. His mercenaries were well armed and outnumbered the crew. Instead, they focused on using their knowledge of the Xerox to their advantage. "If we can predict where Marcus will set up his traps, we can intercept him before he causes any more harm," Rachel suggested. Daniel nodded. "And if we can disable his equipment, we might be able to shut down his operation without bloodshed." The next morning, a small team led by Daniel prepared to head back to the surface. Their mission was risky. Marcus's mercenaries were still patrolling the jungle, and the Xerox themselves remained an ever-present threat. But the stakes were too high to ignore. As the shuttle descended toward Zeta 7, Rachel stayed behind, monitoring their progress from the ship's sensors. On the ground, Daniel's team moved quickly and quietly, avoiding detection as they approached Marcus's latest campsite. The mercenaries were busy setting up new traps, oblivious to the danger closing in. Using EMP devices, the crew disabled Marcus's equipment, rendering his traps useless. When the mercenaries realized what was happening, they opened fire, forcing Daniel's team to take cover. A tense firefight broke out, the sound of plasma shots echoing through the jungle. Just as it seemed the situation might spiral out of control, Marcus appeared, his weapon drawn. "Enough," he shouted, stepping between the two groups. "You win this round, but don't think this is over." His eyes burned with anger, but there was also a flicker of resignation. Without his gear, he had no choice but to retreat, for now. Back aboard the Odyssey Dawn, the crew breathed a sigh of relief. They had managed to stop Marcus, at least temporarily, but the victory felt hollow. The jungle below bore the scars of humanity's greed, and the Xerx continued to roam free, their glowing eyes watching silently from the shadows. Somewhere deep within the forest, the creatures roared, a haunting reminder of the power they held and the fragile line between survival and destruction. The victory over Marcus Kane felt short-lived. Though his operation had been disrupted, the damage to Zeta-7's ecosystem was undeniable. The jungle bore scars from the Xerax stampede, and the crew of the Odyssey Dawn struggled with the weight of their failure. Dr. Rachel Carter spent hours staring at images of the devastated landscape, her mind racing with thoughts of what could have been done differently. Humanity's presence on Zeta-7 had brought nothing but chaos, and she couldn't help but question whether they belonged there at all. Lieutenant Daniel Brooks noticed her growing despair. He found her late one night in the lab, her face illuminated by the soft glow of her tablet. "You've been quiet lately," he said gently, pulling up a chair beside her. "What's on your mind?" Rachel sighed, setting the tablet down. "I keep thinking about how we got here. We came to study, to understand, to make things better. But instead, we've caused so much harm. Is this really who we are? A species that takes and destroys without thinking about the consequences?" Daniel hesitated, unsure of how to respond. He wanted to reassure her, but deep down, he wasn't sure he disagreed. Still, he tried. "It's not all of us, Rachel. Look at what we did today. We stopped Marcus from doing even more damage. That counts for something." "But is it enough?" she asked, her voice trembling. "We've seen what happens when humans act out of greed or fear. We exploit, we fight, we destroy. And yet, I saw something else today too." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "When Marcus's mercenaries were attacking us, you didn't hesitate to protect them, even though they were working against us. You could have let them fend for themselves, but you didn't. That's humanity too, isn't it? The ability to care, to help, even when it's hard." Daniel smiled faintly. "Maybe. Or maybe I just didn't want anyone else getting hurt because of Marcus's stupidity." Rachel chuckled softly, the tension easing slightly. "Either way, it gave me hope. If we can channel that part of ourselves, the part that chooses cooperation over conflict, maybe we can still make a difference here." Her words lingered in Daniel's mind long after their conversation ended. The next day, Rachel approached Captain Lucas Grayson with a bold proposal. "We need to shift our focus," she said firmly. "Instead of trying to capture or control the Xerx, let's use what we've learned to help preserve their environment. We can set up monitoring stations, document their behavior, and find ways to minimize our impact on the planet." Lucas listened carefully, his expression thoughtful. "That's a big change from our original mission. Are you sure it's the right move?" "I am," Rachel replied. "If we continue down this path, we'll only cause more harm. But if we take a step back, if we prioritize understanding over exploitation, we might actually leave this planet better than we found it." Lucas nodded slowly. "All right, let's give it a try. But we'll need everyone on board." Word spread quickly among the crew, and while some were skeptical, others embraced the new direction. Even those who had initially sided with Marcus began to see the value in Rachel's plan. Together, they worked to repair the damage caused by the stampede, planting native vegetation and removing debris left behind by Marcus's operation. As days turned into weeks, the crew grew closer, united by their shared purpose. They installed sensors throughout the jungle to track the Xerx movements, careful not to disturb their natural behavior. For the first time since arriving on Zeta-7, they felt like guests rather than invaders. One evening, as Rachel stood on the observation deck, watching the planet's glowing horizon, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known before. Humanity had made mistakes, terrible ones, but it wasn't too late to learn from them. Somewhere below, the Xerx roamed freely, their haunting roars echoing through the jungle. They were powerful, intelligent, and untamed. But they weren't monsters. They were survivors, just like the humans above them. For the first time, Rachel realized that humanity's true strength didn't lie in domination or conquest. It lay in its capacity for change, for growth, and for choosing a better path. As the Odyssey Dawn prepared to leave orbit, she knew their journey was far from over. But for now, they had taken the first step toward a future where humans and Xerx could coexist, not as enemies, but as equals.